My name is Cory Wright. I'm your Kittitas County Commissioner for District 1. And today, I'd like to talk to you about REET 2, also known as the Real Estate Excise Tax second quarter percent. There's a lot of questions and misinformation out right now. So I thought I'd take some time today to talk about the real facts behind REET 2. First, what is it? It is not a property tax. There are two different types of taxes in Washington State. There are property taxes, which you pay annually based on a valuation of your property if you're a landowner, and excise taxes, which are paid one time at the point of sale. When excise taxes are collected in Washington State now, there is a share to the state. For purchases less than $500,000, it's 1.1%. From $500,000 to $1.5 million, it's 1.28%. And for houses, for $1.5 million to $3 million, you're looking at 2.75%, and over $3 million, 3% goes to the state. And where does that money actually go to? Well, as you can see here, the PW Assistance, the Public Works Assistance Fund, gets 1.7% of that. The City County Assistance Fund gets 1.4% of that. And the State General Fund gets 79.4% of that. That's everything from saving the orcas to building a bridge somewhere that has nothing to do with Kittitas County to someone's downtown civic project as part of the Capital Grant Fund. And the rest of it goes to Educational Legacy Trust Account, which helps support schools. Now let's talk about the local real estate excise tax. It's currently 0.25%. That's known as REET 1. That has been passed. It's proposed to go to half a percentage point, 0.50%. So has it doubled? Yeah, it has. But let's actually talk about what doubling your taxes really means. For a $500,000 home sale under REET 1, $1,250 goes to the county for local projects, which we're going to talk about more in a minute. For REET 2, the proposed REET 2 tax, that's another $1,250. So on your $500,000 home that's being taxed at 1.1% by the state, we have half a percentage here. And this percentage doesn't change no matter what the cost of your home is, unlike the state's graduated tax. But let's talk about the next piece. Where does it go? So let's talk about REET 1, what's paid now. This is actually in law under the Revised Code of Washington, Part 82-46010. Capital projects are what REET 1 is for, and they have to be in our capital facilities plan as an identified project. And what does that actually mean as a capital facility? Well, let me explain it to you. Planning, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, repair, replacement, rehabilitation, or improvement of streets, roads, highways, sidewalks, streets, bridges, domestic water systems, storm and sanitary sewer systems, parks, recreation facilities, law enforcement facilities, fire protection facilities, trails, libraries, administration facilities, river flood control projects, and technology infrastructure that is integral to capital projects. Whew. But no general fund. This has a specific purpose under the law. And REET 2, well, you'll find that at RCW 8246.035. And what does this one actually cover? Streets and roads, sidewalks, signals, bridges, and water and sewer systems, parks, and 25% of that can actually be used towards maintenance on capital projects paid for under REET 1. It can also be used for affordable housing projects. How many counties have actually done this in Washington State? Well, 20 counties. 20 counties have done this. And you may see these below and may be able to put together some of the counties which aren't exactly far left blue counties. So let's go through those. We have Franklin, we have Grant, Kittitas, and then I seem to have lost my Post-its, but I can tell you Chelan, Columbia, and Lewis County. Those are all fairly right-wing red counties that chose to support this REET 2 tax based on their local needs. But let's talk about the next piece of this, which I think is pretty controversial. You may have received a fairly alarming postcard or heard an ad on the radio or even read a full-page newspaper ad put out by the realtors talking about the commissioners trying to use a loophole to pass REET 2. Let's talk about the loophole. RCW 8246.035 is the enabling statute for REET 2. And it's very prescriptive about how the law gets passed. It's all about a whole nother act, which you may have heard of. The GMA, or Growth Management Act, which has been around here for about 30 years now. Originally, Kittitas County was known as an opt-in county in 1990. The commissioners at that time chose to plan under the Growth Management Act. It was not mandatory. However, population went up significantly, which causes some changes in our GMA status. Mandatory planning. Under RCW 3670A 040 subpart 1, in the middle of that, it's a fairly long statute that talks about which counties do and don't mandatorily plan under GMA, but in the middle, any other county, regardless of population, that has had its population increase by more than 20% in the previous 10 years becomes a mandatory planning county. Between 1990 and 2000, our population increased 24.8%. Between 2000 and 2010, our population increased 22.6%. And the Department of Commerce agrees with us. We have confirmed this. Okay, so we figured out we're a mandatory planning county. What about this GMA? What actually happens with REET 2? Well, under the statute, if you're an opt-in county, it's a popular vote, a vote of the people. A mandatory planning county like Kittitas County must be passed by the legislative body. But it actually has a little bit of a funny language in there. It says the legislative body may approve it. So let's talk about this may. I'm going to be honest with you, we've already made this mistake. Earlier this year, the Board of County Commissioners voted to pass the proposed mental health tax, a 0.1% sales tax, to a vote of the people. This was done on preliminary advice from our deputy prosecuting attorney. After review of the statute, both legal experts from MRSC and our head prosecuting attorney agreed there is no alternative to the prescribed method. Though it says may, that is an indication that the legislative body or the popular vote may approve it. It does not say that there is a default popular vote. That's it. It's not a loophole, it's the law. So now we've learned how the law is passed. But why are we even talking about REET 2? Here's a question for you. Have you tried turning onto Main Street in Ellensburg, First Street in Cle Elum, or Pennsylvania in Roslyn lately? Have you tried using the roundabout? Have you tried going up 903? Population and growth are absolutely hamstringing our county. Here's a little story about my personal history mixed in with our census figures over the last century. 1923, my grandfather was born. He's the fourth generation of his family to live here. There's about 17,500 people in Kittitas County. In 1950, just a few months after my mom was born, our population has increased almost 3,000 people. Actually, almost 3,000 people to 20,230 people. I'm born in 1973. We've grown to about 26,000 people. Another increase, yes, over the prior. And in 2000, 27 years later, our census figures are 33,000 people. Now let's jump to 2010. We've compressed the timeline somewhat. In 10 years, our population has grown 7,000, from 33 to almost 41,000, more than it grew in the 27 years prior that I had been here. And in 2020, our most recent census, we've actually grown now to 44,000 people, 337. That's below estimates, but remember, last year's census was conducted in a pandemic. So there's a good chance that many of our students especially were not counted as part of our census. I believe we actually have more. But here's a figure that I placed out here. It's a little illegible. 2037. Why is that so important 16 years from now? Well, in 2017, COG, the Kittitas County Conference of Governments, that's the county and the cities, approved our 20-year population figure for 2037. This might surprise you, but it sure didn't surprise me after doing some examination. 65,000 people. That's what we're looking at in 16 years. Today's babies are going to get their driver's licenses, and we have an estimate of 65,000 people that they're going to have to be navigating around when that time comes. Growth, there's no getting around it. Growth is urbanization. And that's a conversation that we're going to have to get honest about. And I'm trying to get honest with you as the CEO of your county organization, along with 2 other commissioners who also act as your CEO. Yeah, okay, 65,000 hasn't happened yet, right? But let's have that honest conversation. We're going to have to get serious about a few things. The infrastructure of our county and the cost of it now versus later. Service levels. If we can't keep up with revenue to pay for the services that we have now or the levels of service that you expect, especially in our transportation network, we may not be able to deliver that. And quality of life. If we don't get ahead of where we're going to be and walk into the next 20 years unplanned and unfunded to be able to execute any plans that we do want to have take place, we won't be able to accomplish those. And our quality of life in this county will be lost. I've seen it personally in my almost 50 years of being here, and I don't want to see my kids lose any more of that. So I'm going to point out what many of you have already told me. But my taxes are so high. Let's talk about that. If you look at your property tax statement, you'll see quite a few different organizations on there. The county's on there, but so are schools, so are cities, so are fire districts, hospital districts, cemetery districts, and others. The county acts as the collection point. It's not the county's tax statement across the board. We're actually a fairly smaller portion of your tax bill. But let's dig into this a little more. Where the county does act, we have some limitations as far as what we can do. The property levy, and I actually don't have my post-it note, but the property levy annually has a limitation under the state constitution of 1% annually. 1% annually by law, the commissioners can raise the property levy. What does that mean for a $5 million levy? That means for that specific year, it could be raised $50,000. There's a caveat here. Out of the last 21, I'm going to move this up, 21 levies, commissioners chose to not take the levy raise 13 times. 13 times the levy rate was 0, including 12 years straight. From 1999 to 2011, your tax levy did not get raised. Now, I won't speak to the circumstances or the decisions made at the time. I'm sure that there were perfectly valid reasons for it. But there's consequences to that. When the levy, here's a graph showing the levy rate. When the levy rate stayed flat and had a bump here, and then had another little zero and then went up again, it's been about 1% every year, maintenance costs and labor costs never stopped rising. Things got shifted around, but these costs continue to accrue. But that's not all. There's another little piece of this which you may not be aware of. Bank capacity and a levy shift. What does that mean? Well, when the levy doesn't get raised to the maximum, it can be retained as what's known as bank capacity, meaning it can be lumped together and taken in a single year. There's another piece of this called a levy shift, where money from one fund, specifically the road fund, can be used to augment the general fund. And when that money gets shifted, the bank capacity of the road fund actually raises. So while your general levy didn't raise that much over the last few years, the road fund actually went up fairly significantly. There's been years as high as 35% over the last 6 years. This is trying to catch up, and I'm going to talk about more with the roads later. But here's what happens. Essentially, taxes go up to meet deferred maintenance. We are taking advantage of that bank capacity now as an unfortunate consequence of trying to catch up to maintenance that did not get taken care of. So the message here is simple. Pay now or pay later. There's no getting around that. But why REET 2 to help cover these problems? Let's talk about that. First off, it's restricted funding. The very problems that I'm speaking about, that's all we can spend the money on. It's very prescriptive. We cannot put this into our general fund like the state does. It specifically goes after those areas which we need the most help. Secondly, it's one time. It's not ongoing. You don't pay this annually. It only happens on a single transaction at the time of sale. Third, It targets the very growth impacts we're talking about. Our road network, our public facilities, our services, those areas which we are experiencing issues with as a result of growth, this goes directly to that. Let's talk about a specific one, county facilities. County facilities are all over, and you may not even realize some of the ones that are out there. Obviously our courthouse, we also have other ones like our event center and our airport. Right now, $7 million are needed for the next 5 years just to keep the doors open. That's not the county telling you that as a commissioner. That's actually from a facility assessment we had done this year when we purchased a facility maintenance software program, because we recognize that this is an ongoing cost and we wanted to have a baseline. That's alarming. This directly contributes to our economic growth. If we don't have public facilities, we won't have business recruitment because we are a dilapidated, rundown area. That can't happen. County roads, $91 million over the next 20 years are necessary to keep up with not only ongoing maintenance, but necessary capital projects and expansion. Again, that's not the county saying that. In 2018, we had a 20-year transportation improvement plan report done by an external consultant. Fiscal sustainability strategy for Kittitas County Public Works. You're welcome to ask me for this. It's alarming. We also have a issue with bridges right now, which many of you have probably seen in the amount of new load limit signs on our bridges. That's a direct impact on our local commerce. Service levels. We're going to have to get honest about service levels at some point if we don't make up this shortfall. Gravel roads could be in our future. There could be other issues as well and other impacts which have yet to be explored. But it's not sustainable at this point. Signalization. With growth comes traffic control. If you spend any time in Linwood, Monroe, South Hill, those are areas which used to be rural. I've spent more than 10 minutes at a single four-way stop sign at 5 o'clock at night. We can't have that in our area. We will have to begin looking at signalization, and every single one of those intersections is at least $600,000. This is not going to work without some sort of new funding. And most alarming, within 3 years, our road fund is going to be underwater if we don't do something significant about it. This is a result of that deferred maintenance that I've talked about earlier. So there's a third piece to this that we're looking at as well, and that's recreation management. You may not know this, 76% of our county is publicly owned. And that includes land that is managed by state, federal, and NGO, non-governmental organization land managers that treat it as publicly owned land. People want to play here. We see it every weekend, and now, especially with the onset of COVID, they want to live here, and they can. Homes are valuable, and they have become even more valuable in the last 5 years. From 24 to 2019, assessed values of properties in Kittitas County rose 36%. And that's actually lagging significantly behind the actual market values. If you want to sell your home for the assessed value, talk to any realtor and they'll be happy to connect you with a buyer willing to buy your home for cash immediately. Recreation adds value. It adds value to our property. It adds value to our county. But recreation also has impacts. Traffic and parking is obviously one which we see all the time. Our roads are congested, our trailheads are full, and people are parking in areas which were previously never used. Public safety. Folks want to use our land, but that also comes with an impact to response and also trying to use areas which they may be unfamiliar with. We have a heavy search and rescue force. We also have issues on our waterways. That's a hidden cost which you may not be aware of when it comes to your bottom line. And the quality of life. We have a county which we love, which we've moved here to enjoy and appreciate. We want to maintain that as much as we can. We want people to enjoy it as well, but we want them to do it responsibly. This past year, the commissioners passed the 2020 Rec and Tourism Plan, and this was actually a reboot of a 2016 plan that was never approved, but put together. We decided to take it off the shelf, thanks to Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, and re-examine what this was all about. Out of the 8 elements that were originally in there, this board chose to focus on 3 specific areas. Number 1, trail systems. Building a system of trails throughout our county will make it more accessible, and we have the opportunity to do it now before it's too late. Second, resource parks. This is an opportunity for us as well to build new facilities which can help assist in access to areas like waterways, but also provide new picnicking and day use and campground areas, which right now aren't possible with our current state and federal facilities being as full as they are. And last, special purpose facilities. This is a broad-ranging area, but there's an opportunity here to solve some land conflicts, especially with archery and gun ranges. Right now, shooting is a popular sport, and it will continue to be a popular sport in Kittitas County, but it's uncontrolled and it's difficult to find an area that makes sense. We want to fix some of these impact areas using the REET 2 funds where possible. So let's look at what's proposed under this under our 6-year capital improvement plan for rec and tourism. First off, a Highway 10 boat launch. If you've been on Highway 10, the upper Highway 10 area on the weekends, you know a lot of folks want to access the river up there at the Teanaway Bridge. There's an opportunity for us to build a new boat launch in that area. This would be a significant benefit to the upper county. Vantage improvements. Vantage for many years has been a forgotten area of our county. It has immense recreation potential, and with the opening of the Beverly Bridge, we have an opportunity to connect the Ginkgo State Park and that bridge with a bike and pedestrian lane, and also help with parking issues that now are a significant public nuisance on the weekends. Gladmar Park, you may not be aware of this, but Gladmar Park is a park that the county owns near Thorpe. We also have other parks such as Ryan Thompson Park or the Nanham Pond Kids Fishing Pond. These are areas which we have now, which we're doing our best to keep up with using a public works department who works hard to do it, but has also assisted with civic organizations to take care of Ryan Thompson Park. Gladmar Park is a forgotten area which would be a fantastic river access point and also provide some opportunities in the Thorpe area to not only access the river, but potential economic development as well. ATV trails. For those of you in the upper county, you know people come here to ride. This is part of our heritage, and this is what many folks want to do. However, when people show up, they want to ride, and they're not doing it in the right places. We want to look at how we can build a system of new ATV trails and use that, similar to a ski area, as an off-road day park with passes. It happens in Thurston County at Capitol Forest. We think this could be a great revenue stream and also solve some existing land conflicts now. And we also need to expand trailhead parking in the towns to Teanaway system. The Teanaway Community Forest is an area which people want to come here to access using the system of trails that are here now, but they need places to park. If folks in the upper county want to continue to be able to use that area and also deal with existing impacts, we've got to figure that out. But most of all, we just want to build a new recreation management division. Our Public Works Department has taken this on, but Public Works is not equipped to not only deal with the impacts locally, but also deal with our land managers at the federal and state levels and keep tabs on what they're doing. We need to have a seat at the table, and we need to be staffed to be able to carry on that conversation. We're not equipped to do that now. When we manage recreation, we grow our economy. And that's important to not only our county's benefit, but your bottom line as well as a taxpayer. So where do I stand on REET 2? If you've stuck with me long enough, you've probably already figured this out. But before I take this off, I want to tell you a couple stories. In the early 20s and 30s, the Kittitas Reclamation District was built in Kittitas County. It has been a mainstay of our agricultural community and was done with broad community support. They recognized the potential and put it together. My great-grandfather was actually a primary driver behind that and went to Washington, D.C. multiple times to secure funding. But it was also a locally supported program. In the 50s, on the flip side, we had an opportunity in our PUD, our Public Utility District, to actually be the licensed operator of Wanapum Dam. We turned that down, and Grant County was happy to pick that up. And we've been looking at that dam longingly ever since as a source of not only cheap power for that county, but also a source of significant economic growth We had our chance and we didn't take it at the time. Opportunities are limited, and we've got to act when the time is right. I'm going to support it. I think it's important for us. I think it's important for the future. And I want to make sure that our children have opportunities just as we did as residents and taxpayers to make sure that we can build a community for the future. Thank you for watching. I know it's been long, but I appreciate you staying with me. If you have any comments, you're welcome to call me at the phone number here. Our hearing will be September 21st at 2 p.m. It's going to be virtual only, simply because there are so many people who are interested in coming, and we don't have the space to handle it right now with the current guidelines put forth by the state government to respond to COVID-19. You can also email your comments to bocc@co.kittitas.wa.us. Thanks for watching.